Hello, everyone. Welcome to this edition of A Sip of Knowledge with Marty Duffy, the masked Marty Duffy, Liz Rhodes, and Lou Bryson. And a special guest this week, Jamie Duffy from The Collective, who I will let the gang introduce you to in just a moment. Before we get started, real quick, I'm Will Hookinga from Zavvy.co. And before I turn things over to your host, just want to point out a couple of things, features you can use to interact with them. So on the right, you probably see the chat box. Feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're tuning in from. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little button that says Ask a Question. So if you have a question for any of our hosts or Jamie at any point, put it in there. I'll be keeping an eye on those and relaying them to our hosts. And last but not least, share the event with your friends if you can. There's a share button at the top right, and you can invite anyone you know to join us. But with that said, I will turn things over to your host now. Marty, Lou, Liz. Marty, remove your mask and take it away.
It's me. A lot of folks were fooled by this, but no, it's me.
I think the big Glencairn in the background gave you away.
Which big Glencairn? This big Glencairn or that big Glencairn?
Well, that's it.
Or this big Glencairn.
Oh.
Yeah. So, hi, everyone. My name is Martin Duffy. I'm a former master of whiskey for DIAGEO many years until I was defrocked and kicked out of the order. I was a brand ambassador for Benedictine for 18 glorious months, and then co-produced the Chicago Independent Spirit Expo for 8 years until I left that, threw the ashes of that towards this girl. And then and for the last 6 years, I'm going to be celebrating my 6th anniversary in a few weeks as the national brand representative for Glencairn Crystal, makers of the iconic glass, celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. Yeah. Oh my God, the girl, Jamie. Liz.
Thanks, Marty. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Liz Rhodes, technical distiller and spirit consultant. I have just over a decade of experience in alcoholic beverage, spanning across beer, vodka, rum, but I think my co-hosts and guests would all agree with me, my favorite being whiskey. I'm currently founder and principal at Spirit Safe Consulting. And again, if you scroll down to the About the Host section, you can click on my website to learn a little bit more. But with that, turn it over to Lou.
Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Marty. I'm Lou Bryson. I write about whiskey for a living. I drink whiskey for a living. I'm very happy for a living. I was the managing editor at Whiskey Advocate magazine for about 20 years, and I am now best known probably right now as the author of Whiskey Masterclass, my latest book, which came out in February. A romp through the creation of whiskey flavor and aroma, if you will.
Check out page 251.
Might have been the biggest mistake of my writing career.
Acknowledge it.
I've created a monster.
I get my name in
But
print.
that's what I do, and I'm a senior drinks writer for the Daily Beast. You can find me online at dailybeast.com. And here, every week for my sins. This has actually turned into a fun thing we've been doing since, late May?
May, June, July.
Early May.
Yeah,
early May.
Yeah, it's been at least.
Yeah, Marty got right on
of May.
Yeah.
Cool.
And this week, let's have complete transparency here. Our guest this week is actually Lou Bryson's niece. That's why.
I'll take that.
There's the name. But she identifies as my niece, which is weird. So, in fact, here's a picture of all four of us. If you can see that, there's a picture of all four of us. Lou is actually sitting on Liz's lap.
You just got a little bit of hair peeking out. That's her.
So there you go. No, this week is our very talented, very lovely, great family genes, I'm guessing. Jamie Duffy from the Collective, which is part of Thoroughbred. Jamie, can you give us a little bit of your background, especially a lot about your uncle?
Definitely. So I started, I guess the very beginning of my career was when Marty gave me a contact for a promotional company in Wisconsin. And in college, I was a promo girl for DIAGEO. And I think most people would take that job and be like, okay, that was just college. But at that time, Marty had moved to Ireland and was back. And I just really saw all the opportunities that the liquor industry opened for him. And I really enjoyed what I was doing at that time. And I thought, well, maybe I'll try and take it a step further and see if that works. Then out of college, I took a desk job in recruiting and just really felt no passion behind my job. I felt like I was just working 9 to 5. So I went to Quincy Street Distillery, which is a distillery in the Chicago suburbs in Riverside. And I went in and I just said, hey, do you guys need someone to do some sales for you? I can sit in the back, learn how to distill, help with bottling, whatever you need. And they gave me a part-time job for outside of my 9 to 5 job. So from there, I just kind of made it up as I went. I learned a lot. When I first took the job, I didn't know the difference between like bourbon, rye, how products were made. So very minimal knowledge, but just took that time to basically use it as an internship to really soak up everything they had to teach me. And then I went, actually was interviewing with Southern, and they had offered me a position. So I quit my day job. And then in the middle of that, I ended up getting a call from Brian Bemis, who owns Driftless Glen Distillery. And they offered me a position. At the time, it was the Illinois sales state manager, but we did not have distribution in Wisconsin yet either in their home state. So quickly turned into me moving up there and helping to get everything rolling with distribution and sales. And the distillery had just opened as well. So I really took on a lot of roles there because everyone who was working there was doing that. As we were brand new, we just kind of took on whatever came our way. And from there, I went to Palm Bay International, which is, I feel like 90% of the people who are aware of Palm Bay International think of it as a wine importing company, but they actually do have 18 spirit brands. I think I had something like 40 something SKUs that I managed in the Midwest as the spirit specialist. And that really broadened my horizons to the business side of things, as far as how to develop pricing, how to work with your distributor, how to manage your budget. And then from there, I was approached by the Collective, which was just an idea at the time. And I came on about 2 years ago to the Collective, and we started it. And it's essentially it's a collective of brands that we keep the distillers distilling, and we manage all the sales and distribution and marketing for your brands.
Jamie, now, is it a loose collective? Because you've had brands come and go, yes?
Yes. Yeah. So the idea with it is, the way the idea of the Collective came about was there were brands that Thoroughbred, so Thoroughbred's a consulting company, they're our parent company, and they do everything you can imagine, to picking up the phone and calling and saying, I have $5 million, I want to open a distillery, what do I do? They can come up with your concept, they have engineers, they can, we have full-time distillers that can help you learn how to distill, we do all your packaging and design, or we can just do parts of that. What we were finding was these brands, we'd help them get to a point where they were ready to sell. And then they'd go, okay, now what? And we'd say, go spread your wings, do it. Like, we set you up perfectly for this. And they'd say, well, we know you have connections. Can you get us in with just making up Breakthrough, for example. So we'd set up a call with Breakthrough, and we found that it was virtually impossible to halfway consult with sales unless you're fully involved.
Just to clarify for people who may not, I'm always looking out for the drinkers. Breakthrough is a wholesaler.
Yes, is a wholesaler. So we would help people get signed with a wholesaler, and then it would quickly become very confusing because maybe they had no experience in sales, the distillery that got signed on. So we'd get a call in 6 months from someone at Breakthrough saying, these guys have no idea what they're doing. Why'd you make us bring the brand on? And so from there, we realized there's no halfway in, there's no halfway out. If you go halfway in, you're now jeopardizing your own reputation, right? As the collector or as Thoroughbred. So the collective came about for brands who do not have the money to get a full-time salesperson on board, but maybe they do have the money to split a full-time salesperson between 4 brands. That also, if you're a small company, if you're a small distillery just starting, maybe you'll do 300 cases in a year. That might not get you a meeting with top to top at Breakthrough, but maybe the other 3 brands and your brand is enough to get the attention of distributors. So that was our whole game plan with it. But we typically sign about 2-year contracts. We work with each brand differently, but we love to see when it gets to a point that a brand wants their own salesperson. We know that brands are going to outgrow us. Maybe one day we will be able to grow with a brand, but right now we want to get you to that point where you guys are solo, you have your own team, you learned enough from the collective, and they got you started in the markets.
And I mean, I would assume that makes you really good at that part of it. You have all that experience at getting them to that point. So maybe letting them go isn't all that bad. I wanted to back up a little bit. One of the things I wanted to ask you and to throw out there, and one of the things I urge people to listen today for, you mentioned that you had the job as the promotional girl in college. What did you go to college for? What were you thinking about doing? And I guess, I mean, I hear I was interested in liquor because I was too. I wanted to get a job in alcoholic beverages myself. But where were you aimed at first, and how did you slide into it? And what was, I guess, the most valuable experience you picked up, and what was your aim? That kind of thing.
Yeah. So
like if people wanted to get a job doing what you do, how'd you get there?
Yeah, and I don't think, I think promotional modeling or doing store tastings, often to do with the promos for smaller companies, is a great first step, because honestly, it can be mind-numbing saying the same 3 sentences to 50 people who walk into Binny's. Sure. It's not always fun. And I think a lot of people want to jump into the liquor industry. I get it all the time after I leave a role and I'm like, oh, they're hiring someone who's never worked in the industry. It's like, great, I'll take your job. And it's like, okay, well, I did a lot of work to get here. You do have to take, you got to pay your dues. But I think if you don't have that initial passion, it's not going to work. And I think that goes for any industry, any job you ever take. If you don't have any passion behind it, it doesn't work. So starting out on a small scale is awesome. Also, tasters make a ton of money. So for example, I think at the time when I was in college, I was making about $25 an hour, and I got to set my own schedule. So to be honest with you, that's why I took it. It was the best job at the time that you can get when you're still in college. Prior to that, I was working minimum wage at a restaurant. So
I could numb my mind for a while for that in college. Yeah.
And I think the thing I realized is I really enjoy, and that comes from people who are good at bartending or working in restaurants.
That's $1,000 if you work 40 hours. $1,000 a week.
Yeah.
Bar or store. Oh,
but you have to be able to be patient with people. You have to actually enjoy talking to people.
It doesn't suck.
Yeah. Pretty much. But there's a lot of people who don't want to cold call, or they don't want to initiate a conversation. So I think especially going into, if you're interested in the sales side of spirits, you better be able to be super outgoing and talk to anyone. That's honestly the biggest skill.
We've all seen that taking place. It's not that easy. It's not as easy as it looks unless you've got that
Yeah. I know of
Fire.
one distillery, they hired a guy who had a lot of the background, worked at a distributor and everything, and he worked for 3 months and made no account calls. And when he was finally called on, he says, well, yeah, the distributor hasn't called me up. I go, what? Distributor hasn't called you. You're the brand ambassador. You're supposed to be going out there and brand. And no, and he said, I don't feel comfortable doing that. Well,
Wow.
he had something he should have told the boss.
Is there,
I'm
is there not a book or a course or a guide for this kind of stuff?
Not
There
at
are.
all.
I know there are.
But are there?
Yeah, how
There's
to do
really
sales.
not.
Make freaking calls. I mean,
Well,
I don't do dick on sales, and I know that. Come on.
yeah, but I mean, you know what? Even if you took a course, I think this is what I sense what Jamie was about to say. Even if you took a course, if that isn't in your personality,
Yeah, that's true.
and you can take all the courses in the world, but
Yeah,
a little wallflower,
Mhm.
yeah.
I'm actually managing a gal right now in her first sales role, and she has some restaurant industry experience, but really not much. But I knew she was going to be great because she's an entrepreneur. So someone who's able to be a go-getter, get out there, make things up as they go, they're going to be great at the job. And you got to have like a little fire within you. You can't go to 3 calls and be like, well, hit the numbers, I'm done today. Like, it takes people to be passionate.
And they
I mean, I have to admit, my problem is I take no for an answer. So I okay, all right.
Okay, yeah, you're right.
I get that.
I gotta attest too, Jamie. Jamie, it always seemed to me like you were going faster than the people you were working for. Like the people you were working for couldn't keep up with you. You were saying, "Well, we got to do this, we got to do that. Let's get this going. We have this going." They're going, "What did you just do? What are we doing?"
Yeah,
No,
I think
we can't
that's.
do that. I'm not ready for that yet.
I think that's my worst and best personality. Sometimes I move too fast, Sometimes like, let's just do it. Let's just get done. It's got to be done now. And then it's like I could have slowed down and thought that one out.
So I had a follow-up question, actually, back to the taster conversation. I guess me as a consumer, but not really a consumer, because being on the other side of things. Whenever I go to a Benny's or whatever liquor store and there's tasting events, I'll usually try and taste just to kind of see what's going on, see what's out there. And I always feel like I'm making comments to myself and sort of analyzing, but I don't always communicate that back to the person who's presenting the tasting, mainly because I'm kind of like, I want to have this really big conversation about the tasting notes, but that's probably, not something. But do those data points ever get back to, who you're representing, or is it merely case volume? That's the metric that we're trying to achieve.
So even for On the Rocks, which is my aunt founded the promo company, but it's who works with Breakthrough right now.
Okay.
They have, so let's say I say we got to do 100 tastings because that's what I budgeted for the year. We use an outside company sometimes, depending. Like when we had Jewel Osco, we couldn't cover all those Jewel Oscos on our own, so we used On the Rocks. And most every company I've ever worked for, they actually have like a full sheet that all the tasters put any responses back.
Whoa, okay.
And we actually go through that data religiously.
Interesting.
Because I feel like sometimes when I'm doing the tastings, I try my hardest to get honest feedback, but I also am trying to push people into thinking what I think about the product. So it's
Of course you are.
I'm going to convince you
it works.
that you're tasting
refreshing.
whatever I say you're tasting. Hints of cocoa nibs, it's there.
Black
As I said
pepper,
it was.
some
Do you
figs.
get that or not? Are you stupid? Huh?
Right.
I get the black pepper. Yeah, totally.
But I love honest
Let's keep it.
feedback. Like people
I'm
will
getting
say things that you
I
never
got it.
think of. So that's it's good.
For example,
I'll bet they do.
Hey, Jamie, does your company also talk to your brands about production? I mean, actually, like you taste their stuff and you go, you know what? You might want to retool this. And do you guys have the ability to help them with that, or how does that work? Would you call in, say, someone like, I don't know, distilling scientist to do such things?
Yeah, definitely. So we just had a recent experience with that, where one of our brands was sourcing bourbon, and we knew what that sourced bourbon tastes like, and it didn't taste the same from the bottles we were getting back. So we have two full-time distillers on the Thoroughbred team. So they'll taste it, but then also just from tasting, we knew it probably wasn't getting enough time to rest outside of the barrel. They were just going straight from the barrel to the bottle.
And is this some Thoroughbred?
And Steve Wright is awesome, by the way.
He is. He's great. I love listening to him.
Is he? Are they? So with Thoroughbred, can if a distillery wants to reach out to you first about, or not even a distillery, say it's a guy who wants to start a brand, and so he's sourcing or he's contracting the liquid from a current, existing distillery. Can you guys come in and just help him with that? I mean, do you guys have different levels of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
Package, but then there's little parcels.
Yeah, I mean, there's been companies or brands that we've just done a package redesign, and that's all they wanted. So we can go through every step that we offer, and you can pick and choose what you're interested. Along with the collective, there's plenty of brands. Due to COVID, we've had more time at home, so I'm working a lot more on the consulting side than I normally would, because I'm normally traveling nonstop. But you can get just consulting help, let's say on the liquid, and never work with the collective for sales, never change your packaging. So it's really catered to each brand and what they feel their weaknesses are. So we end up sending out kind of like a questionnaire for people to take a look at their own business, fill out the questions. And usually by the time they've filled that out, they know what they think their weaknesses are, even if they didn't see that in the first place.
Can you talk about the packaging for a second? Because I know that you experienced this in your career earlier on, just how important packaging is, especially with distributors, importers, and the likes, retailers.
Hey, Marty, can you get that thing that's swinging over your head? It's driving me crazy. Yeah, it's making me nuts. Okay, cat with a ball of string. I just want to whack at it. Thank you.
Now I'm going to start dangling things. Find other things to dangle.
A teensy bit of OCD. I'll admit to it.
Just put it right here. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
So I would argue that with a brand, the very first two things, and it probably drives my boss, Scott Schiller, nuts, I ask is, what's the pricing, what's the packaging, or what's the pricing, can we change the packaging? I can sell anything if it's a pretty package. Obviously, we want to make sure that what's in it is correct too, but honestly, I would say packaging and pricing are the number one importance behind it, because that's ultimately what's going to value your brand at whatever price point it's at. People judge off first impressions constantly. It's the same thing as if you walked into a job interview with sweatpants.
I don't get why people don't understand how important pricing is.
Yes.
Because so many people buy on that.
Because you get a lot of
product.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed with working on the consulting side and with past brands I've worked with, is a lot of people who end up owning a craft distillery or building one are very successful in some other industry. And in their industry, they could shift things, they were specialists in that industry. So a lot of times we hear, yeah, no, I understand that you want the vodka to be $19.99, but people get what they perceive. So I'm just going to make it like a real sexy bottle and we'll have $100 vodka. And you're like, okay, that's not going to work. And they won't listen. But they won't listen because they think that they can change perception. But really, and that's like, I guess, kind of a smaller metaphor for what Thoroughbred is about. You can do all of this and probably learn all of this on your own that we offer, but it's going to take you 15 years of trial and error, or you can hire someone to help give you those secrets. And I wish sometimes people would listen to more of the secrets.
I think some of the, especially when you got
only make recommendations.
Right.
I had a guy contact me who was importing vodka from the Ukraine, but he only had the Midwest rights for it, but he wanted to call it Chicago vodka and charge $80 a bottle for it. And I go, but wait, it's not even made in Chicago, but you're going to call it Chicago vodka. Charge $80. And he told me, I said, well, who do you think is going to buy this? And he goes, well, I've asked some of my friends. They said they'd buy a bottle. I go, that's not the kind of research that R&D really want to do. Get,
and I think another thing that's really important to understand, like off that story, is maybe that could have worked if they were going to take 20 million into marketing and advertising. But so many people think that they're just going to make something and it's going to go viral. And there's so much groundwork that goes into it. Even down to the point where I was explaining this to a new brand we signed as well. Like, don't get discouraged. On average, you have to go to account 3 times before you ever get something placed. And that's a great ratio. But a lot of people think go to an account once and it should be in there because they had a great conversation with the buyer. But it takes follow-up. It takes hard work. It takes trying new things. And I think often people think that their idea is 1 in a million and it'll go viral without any work behind it.
Yeah, I always find that funny is that they do. I mean, sometimes they don't even feel they have to market it. They make it,
right.
They get into a store, and people should just buy it. What's wrong with people? How come my whiskey's still there after 4 months? Jamie, who are some of the brands that you guys represent? Some very well-known brands, I guess.
So the ones we're working right now are St. George Distillery, which everyone should know if you're listening to the podcast. It's one of the oldest craft distilleries in the U.S. We opened, we helped open it, but we're just consulting. We don't own it. Cantilever Distillery. It's in northern Minnesota, actually. The lake that it's on, half that lake's in Canada. So like way up north. Yeah, and they did a great job of, just quickly to mention this, catering to, when we're talking about what when you want to open a new distillery, what are you looking for? And that's owning your home market, and you have to cater to what your home market is. So that's all lake towns up there. It's rural. Everybody goes up there in the summer. So we developed Whoades. It's Whoades Lake Life. It's a premium rail. It's going to be really affordable. It's named after the local fisherman in town, and we put his quotes on every bottle, and it's just great, affordable summer drinking. And it's exploded up north because that's what people want. They're not going to, go buy peated single malts, although we are in the mid. They're also making then a higher end is their cantilever line. So they have a juniperous gin and then a straight bourbon, but they know that up north they needed something to cater to people who what's the price point they're paying for, what are people interested in. They want to support local, so stay close to home. And then our other brand is Sonoma Distilling Company, which Adam was a guest of yours.
Yeah, him we know.
Yeah.
We got him.
Adam.
Oh, but I'm sorry. We also have Jeff the Creed out of
I'm sorry?
Kentucky.
Yes, Jeff.
Jeff the Creed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We should have them on, too.
Joyce and Autumn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
great.
tend to forget because they're not in my markets, but they are part of the collective.
One of the best parking lots of any distillery I've ever been to.
Why is that?
It's beautiful. It's just, I've never been to a distillery where the parking lot was just beautiful black pavement, yellow lines. I mean, it sounds goofy, but when you drive in, you go, oh my
Whose
God.
parking lot?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to add that to the sales
Agreed.
pitch.
That was move bottles. No, their whole place is just really nice.
The whole place is,
Yeah, your whole place is
well thought out, but you can also tell women run it because everything's clean and organized and it's all really pristine and nice. And you compare that to like the Blum Brothers, and it's like a little place,
it's like a bachelor apartment.
Actually, fun fact about Jeff. So Stephanie Preston is the head distiller there, and I actually covered her maternity leave at the Bullet Distillery. So
get out! Really?
all connected. Yeah.
Cool.
That's our industry, right? Though, like it's
all interconnected.
Yes, exactly. I mean, hello, these two. So something you mentioned with one of the distilleries about really understanding the local market. I understand one of your other pieces of your job are helping brands break into new markets. How does that work? What are some of the approaches? Does it change per brand? Does it change per market? If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Is there some process to it, Jamie?
Yeah, so we have, that's part of the consulting scope with Thoroughbred, but that's the part that I help out with the most. And that would be route to market. So route to market will essentially come up with a 5-year plan for you, with what states you should be distributing in, and then how many personnel you need to that brand in those states. So obviously the first and foremost is going to be your home market. And I think something that I'm even learning as I go, as we're getting more and more distributors starting to get bought out and become larger networks, don't go with a distributor that's not excited about you, which sounds silly, but you will go places. And if you feel like you're pushing to get in that door, it may not be a great place to start because you're not going to get enough focus. So a lot of times going with like a mid-tier distributor in your own state is a great way to start. I always recommend, if you can, I know some states are larger than others, when you do a kickoff meeting with your distributor to start, always invite the team to the distillery. It may seem like an initial expense at first, but you're selling a sense of place. You're selling a story. You're not necessarily selling the product, especially for distributor reps who have 200 plus products to sell. You want to get some sort of emotional aspect out of them. So taking them to the distillery is always great. And then from there, move slow. People are always, at first, when we send the plan over, they're always kind of like jaw dropped, like that's all we're going to do, 4 states in 5 years. But the shotgun approach, I've known no brands, if someone could call me and tell me differently, but I've known no brands that do a shotgun approach and it's paid off. Shotgun approach being whatever distributor that says they want you go with in any state. So maybe you hit all over the US, 8 different states in 1 year. The issue with that is unless you have a ton of money, you're probably not going to be able to have someone there full time. If you cannot have a body in the state or someone in a connecting state, it's not worth your time, energy, or money. You're just going to be sending one pallet to them. It's going to go out to their catered stores that they always work with, their star accounts. It's not going to move off the shelf because no one's there pushing it. No one's there talking about it. And you're going to end up losing money.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I always told brands the same thing, in that they're You got to think of your brand and your little distillery as the beginning of the Roman Empire. And the Romans didn't go and, conquer Great Britain before they conquered the rest of Italy. They moved their empire out. And it took 1,000 years, and it eventually did collapse. Keep that in mind. So it did fall. And then there was the Dark Ages afterwards. So
on the other hand, they had a really good time while they were riding it.
Boom. Orgies.
There you go.
True.
Gladiator fights. I think have some of your distilleries do those. Now that would be an attraction. Gladiator fights at the distillery.
Yeah. Safety first.
It's also
I was just you were saying that with the shotgun
cheers to that.
All the gladiators should be wearing masks.
I was thinking about because I always come to this looking at it from craft brewing, and there's 8,000 breweries. I know of 3 that made the shotgun approach work. It just doesn't. Yeah, exactly. Like you said,
you have to have a lot of money, but you got to have a lot of money to make it work. Yeah.
I think what's the old saying? There's something about the slow but true, or slow.
Oh, the rabbit in the hair. Tortoise in the hair.
Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of the rule of thumb that I like to say, this is a bit of a stretch, but if you can't say that you are the #1 best known and most drank distillery in your home state, you're not ready to move to another state. Also take the time to, we take in people who write into the distillery websites and they say, hey, I own 16 liquor stores in Oklahoma. I want this product here. We take that into consideration. That's not a reason to launch a state, but if you continually get requests for a certain state, then you start looking into it.
Yeah, if there's a demand, at least you have the nucleus of a.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then usually an adjacent state that's not a control state will be your second choice when moving on from there, because like, for example, I manage Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, so they're all near each other. So it's easy for me. I think personally, I feel like if you can spend 3 to 4 days a month in a secondary market, you have enough representation. That's not going to be all you're doing. You're going to be managing them weekly, but you have enough representation to do something like Wisconsin, that's a secondary market, or something where you're looking for, you won't hit the same amount of cases, but you can get a product moving.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
This is great. I'm actually learning stuff. This is great.
And then I saw there was a audience question.
Yeah, as a follow-up, there was, a follow-up to the price point question. So a question that's coming from Young Nose of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys.
The Young Nose.
Hello.
Young Nose.
Young Nose.
The Young Nose.
Young Nose.
Qualifier. The question is, when starting up a new brand, how does someone pinpoint the right price point? Especially considering that in the beginning, they would be using sourced product compared to once their own product is ready for bottling. So I guess a sort of whiskey question.
Mm-hmm. So what I did the first time I was trying to come up with correct price pointing when I was at Driftless Glen is quite simply going to the liquor store, going to your largest liquor store, looking at the whiskey that, so let's say it's bourbon, right? You're going to have sourced bourbon and then your own bourbon coming. Going to the liquor store and checking each price of every bourbon there, kind of finding an average with that, finding brands that you consider successful. Don't worry about makers. Don't worry about Bullet. Don't worry about the big national brands. You got to look at your competitive set, which is going to be craft or local. So I would look at what other people are pricing in the market. Don't look at what Lou has. No, I'm kidding.
Ooh, bad.
Hey, I'm drinking Bullet. What do you want? That's what I got today.
No, it's good. Hey, man. I made a living off it.
The second part of the question is a little twofold. Because if you're going to be sourcing a 5-year product, but then you're coming out with your own 2-year, then you're going to want that 5-year to be more expensive. Depending on whether those are congruent, you do want the stuff you are making to be a touch more expensive. Something else I believe in if you're talking about having a source product and then having your own product, make sure you're naming those differently.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because too often you'll find Joe's whiskey that's sourced by makers, and then Joe's whiskey made in-house, and Joe's whiskey made in-house is worse. Or
That's on the label. They put that on the label.
But don't worry,
like, why
So I
aren't
guess
you
it's reassuringly bad.
Like,
Yeah, and
That's how you know
realize
it's
just the
authentic.
work you put into that
thing.
product. Yeah. Even if it's not worse, if it's better, you want people to realize like the time and energy that's been put into that. So name it different.
I kind of had a.
Go ahead, Liz.
Sorry.
No, just a follow-up question to that. Okay. Do we want to read that first?
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. So my follow-up question to that, you mentioned, so now maybe we had some source product and we're coming and we're launching on a 2-year internal product. Does the price point then grow as the product grows in terms of age? Yes. So, assuming that someone would put out a 2-year just to get their juice out, but long term they would want, maybe a 4 or 5-year-old. Is that also sort of with the price point grow?
Something I've noticed is I love a $39.99 price point for whiskey, and that goes for bourbon or rye. Right now, you used to see in the market about 5 years ago, it was always that rye was more expensive. That's virtually disappeared now. So line price your bourbon and ryes. And then also as it gets older, I would rise the price, but again, making sure that you're in line with your competitive set. So if you're already
and that you're
more
communicating to the consumer.
Yes. Yeah. As much as I would like it not to be, age statements are still a big seller. So if you do have something that says 5 years, make that larger. I'm sorry?
Even with American whiskey?
I believe so, yeah. I mean, if you go to every time I think we're getting somewhere with no age statements, then I go to some whiskey show and someone's like, can I have the oldest stuff you got? And it's like, okay.
Yeah, but those guys stand out because they're so annoying. I mean,
no, I agree. There's a lot of them that aren't saying it, but they're still thinking it. I mean, I see it when people are standing at the shelf. They're looking, and then they see the one that says 8 and they grab it.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, when I go to a show, I mean, I'm not a big ageist when it comes to whiskey. A lot of my favorite whiskeys are younger.
You're way ahead of the curve.
I know. That's how I was raised.
Inspiration to live by.
Thank you. But I just think it's I totally forgot what I was going to think. However, there is a question here, and it kind of leads to something I was going to ask both. Oh no! Here's the question I'm going to ask the three of you prior to this question. So you're talking about the differences between sourced and your own in-house juice. Do you guys ever see a brand that might start taking the source stuff and slowly blending it with their own stuff and kind of weaning people off? You ever see any of that going on? I would think so.
You
know what I'm talking about?
Does that.
Who does?
Whistle Pig, farm stock.
Yeah, I know. But in their case, I mean, they're
probably not really going to wean us.
The crazy thing is with them, I don't know if they've changed since. I know they've had some internal changes.
I just like saying weaning.
I was up there. Weenie. I think I want to say weenie. Have you been weaned? You're a weenie. They were actually taking their own stuff, and I asked them at the time, this is maybe 4 years ago, they were taking their own stuff, still using the initial source stuff from Alberta, which I think was their initial release, right? Was from Alberta. Then they started blending it not only with, or vatting it, not only with their in-house stuff, but also with some MGP.
Yeah.
And then they said, yeah, we have no plans on changing that. And I go, really?
I don't think they were really planning on doing a full-on thing.
Which is crazy.
Sorry, I'm sorry. This isn't a Whistle Pig show.
Yeah,
sorry.
No, sorry. Anyway, but no, that's what I want to get to. I wanted to ask all three.
Not a Whistle Pig show.
I'm like, Jamie, you're saying something.
Sorry.
I think that can be confusing, honestly. My initial
people weenies, then they'll all know.
Initially, that plan makes me nervous. I don't have a lot of experience in that. I just would worry about your product changing too much from start to finish. And I've seen brands who are hurting right now that are delicious. There's whiskey out there that's 5+ American whiskey, and it's delicious. And people still don't pull it off the shelf because they had some bad experience with a prior one. And now the brand's virtually ruined.
Hard to overcome.
Yeah.
Blum Brothers did a smart thing where they had their sourced whiskey was called Notter. Their Notter.
I loved that.
Knotter, which of course meant not our whiskey. And so eventually I think they're going to let that slowly fizzle out since all their stuff is now of age. Could go out in the streets by itself.
Okay, Fred's come up with a serious question here that I think is a good one.
Yeah. Jamie,
thanks, Fred.
And this is actually, you know what? I want to include Liz in on this because this is something I've been thinking about asking both of you two for the last 45 minutes. Now, do you ride with? No. Fred's question: do men as handsome as Marty and Lou?
Not that one.
Oh no, but wait a minute. This leads into something. Tend to be better in the craft beverage industry. And actually, what I wanted that kind of, not that we do better. I don't think we do better. But I know recently there was a brand ambassador online. She said she was leaving a lot of the whiskey groups on Facebook because she was getting tired of, I guess, mainly men, and especially gun-loving men. I've seen a couple of those sites, which is a little weird, where it's whiskeys and guns. It's like, I've never drew that correlation. There's
a lot of it.
Do you two ladies ever feel that? Namely, because I would think mainly because your age. I don't think, but then again, it could be women too. I don't know. You guys ever feel that you're getting kind of, what do you know about this young lady? See,
Liz, do you want to take it first?
But they didn't call me young lady.
I was like, feel about what exactly?
Well, do you get that? Do you get, especially the whole, a lot of men drinking whiskey, drinking men, kind of questioning your knowledge and stuff?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like, back to the first impressions or, impressions you make of people. I mean, I think that's with anything. And like, I'll use an example of, I won't say like social groups, and maybe I'm just not that active on social groups for a reason. But
a reason. Not specifically, just a reason.
It's not correlated to this one. I'm not tying that to that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say like consumers, either consumers or at a liquor store, for example. If I'm taking a long time and I'm really sort of looking what's on the shelf, I'm thinking about contemplating what this particular mash bill might be or whatever. I get a lot of, "Oh, do you need help, ma'am?" And I'm just like, well, actually, I think I know a thing or two about what I'm looking at.
The T-shirt, back off! I'm the scientist. I told you should be wearing it.
You should.
And Yeah, there you go. I get it from consumers too. Just like,
Really?
I think just with traveling too, whether it's like, oh, what are you here for, business or pleasure? What are you up to? And I'm like, oh, I'm traveling for business. Oh, what do you do? Like, oh, I work for this. I'll just use my former employer as an example, or like, oh, I'm a consultant. I'll just use my current role as an example.
I made bullet bourbon.
No, it's like I'm a distilling consultant, or I'm in research, and they're like, oh, are you in like marketing, like market research? And I'm like,
No, I'm mixing shit.
So I would say that sort of thing happens.
What about in the industry? Both of you.
I have strong opinions about this. So Marty, you posted once, it was like maybe a year ago, and I feel, no, nothing bad, but I feel ashamed. I don't know the gal's name who wrote it, but you had posted a lady in the beverage industry wrote an article about how the exact answer to this question, and what she said summed it up for me in a way I never thought about it, is essentially it's consumers. It's consumers who think that this is like a guns and whiskey and cigarette business and macho man, but actually the men within the industry, for the most, I would say about 95% of them are my biggest advocates. They're the people who are always making sure I feel comfortable. They've never second guessed me because I'm a female. It's actually the consumers who have an issue with it.
That's
and
weird.
then as far as
sort of my
and I think
it's
in
the outsider's perspective.
In sales, sometimes I feel like people are talking to me like I'm like selling Girl Scout cookies. They're like, "Oh, hi, how are you? What do you girls need?" And I'm like, "I'm here to sell whiskey."
I got that too, though. I got that a lot. I'd be wearing a kilt. They go, "Oh, you're so cute. You're adorable."
See, yeah, but if it works, it works. Salespeople take what they can get. But I do think on the consultant side, I'm currently, like, Scott's kind of been mentoring me through this, and I've been reading a lot. Like, I've been reading Lean In, and then I'm starting a project management book about how to take control of a conversation when someone's that much older than you, or in many cases a lot richer. Like, you have these people who are coming in from other industries who are extremely successful, and they're looking to you for information for you to manage their brand. How do you get them to take you seriously? And there's been little things that I just make sure. The number one thing I've learned is just be as professional as possible. If you have a call with someone, never have that call without 24 hours in advance sending a full detailed agenda. Never, whenever you're working on a project for them, let's say they want feedback on whether a Wisconsin distributor is interested in it or not. Hey, didn't get an answer back from so-and-so, but I'm still thinking about you and looking and hoping to get an answer by next week. So follow up, professionalism. The more you can give them an excuse to not have anything bad to say about you, the more you're proving them wrong.
It's definitely the respect is earned, and make sure everything's buttoned up, and like exactly what you said.
Yeah, and you know what, ladies, I also think a lot of times, I think a lot of people take things, maybe a woman, especially if you're like the only woman in a boardroom of men or whatever, you might take it as, oh, they're doing it because I'm a woman. But believe me, I used to get a lot of shit, especially when we first started with the Scotch stuff, and I wasn't Scottish. In fact, I'm an Irish boy from the southwest side of Chicago. You couldn't get any further from being a Scotsman. And here I'm telling people about Scotch. Oh, and even in the beginning, I had never been to Scotland, which was even worse. So embarrassing. But
the more you can like assert yourself into a situation you know nothing about, that's the only way you can learn. Right. Like, I'm reading a book right now from one of the top CEOs in the country for Facebook, and she was talking about the number one she looked for when someone was interviewing for a job. She would hire them on the spot if they asked, what are the weaknesses within your company and how can I fix those? So be a solution
Oh.
person and be willing to take things on you don't know anything about, because no one knows anything about anything until you try it. It's the truth. I mean, you got to keep trying things.
Well, you can't fail unless you try.
Right.
Or just don't try to fail.
Wait,
That's the big
wait.
I think I need to cut myself off the self-help books. I've got a lot of little one-liners I want to throw.
Failures are opportunities,
Yeah.
guys.
Everybody
Just-
who's ever
even
failed
if you fail,
is at least
yeah.
someone who tried. Lou.
Yeah.
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 You always have to send
No,
a
I-
little inspirational stuff because he gets so down on himself just being an author.
I did have I wanted to follow up with one, a more nuts and bolts question. Also from Fred Swanson, our buddy up in Wisconsin. Do ride with and time with distributor sales folks in the industry mean as much as they used to? Is that still an important thing? Has that been taken over social media? Is that still a big tool?
It's still
Not
a
as
huge
much.
tool. It's still what I look for the most. How much ride time can I get with these people? Because because the way I look at it, right? So you can go and you can see 8 liquor stores in a day. And you're making each liquor store owner, you're trying to convince them in the story and the passion and the excitement and the taste of your spirit. You're turning that person into a brand ambassador because you need that
Right.
liquor store to then go sell the product. So when you're in a ride with a rep, you're making that person a brand ambassador. So they have maybe 200 accounts. Now that's going to be first in their mind. Even when you get out of that car for the next week, you left them samples. You told them how much they're making per case that month. It's just a constant way to get that person as a brand ambassador for you. And that's essentially what your job is all the time. So I love going back to Binny's, and twice a year I do a staff training at every single Binny's, and it takes about 2 weeks of my time. And it sounds silly, but when that Binny's specialist is walking down the aisle and someone asks them, I need a new bourbon, and they just tried mine, they're going to say that without even thinking. So it's constantly getting people interested in your brands. Also, it's a great way to gauge what is that distributor also. Like, I knew that, and now I'm blanking out, what's the peanut butter whiskey?
Oh,
Screwball.
So I was in 3 states in 3 days, and every rep I was with had Screwball in their bag. And they were selling in like 5-case displays. I'd never heard of the product. It had just launched.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And I took that moment to look back, look at the distributors we were working with. Why is that working and ours isn't? I always dig all the time. What are you making on a case for that? Why are you selling this? Oh, it's really good. Why do you keep pitching it? And find the secrets. I mean, it's your time to understand the people who are managing your brand on a daily basis.
it sells really well because it goes really good with Schomburg. It tastes like a peanut butter and jelly
You
sandwich.
mean St. George raspberry liqueur?
Oh, that's the one. I always get those. Oh my God, I always mispronounce it. Yes. And then St. George.
Right.
Oh, Marty, you better not get involved. That sounds like another quarter-ounce brand to me.
No more liqueurs for this boy.
Just kidding.
Yeah, by the way, so that was Fred Swanson from Dancing Goat Distillery up in Wisconsin. Wonderful little distillery. It was Fred who was asking before about just how good looking Lou and Marty were. And he just wanted to specify that his question, while silly, does shine light onto an unsavory, sexist, ageist, misogynistic side of our industry. While small and possibly shrinking, is definitely still prevalent. This is odd because Fred belongs to the He-Man Women's Hater Club of Wisconsin. That's weird. So, but that's good. See you at the next.
Thanks, Fred.
See you at the next rally. And also Jake Hookey from Starward, the wonderful Australian whiskey. I hear you, Marty. I'm not Australian, and people always ask me to do an Australian accent and wrestle with a crocodile. He's lost, I don't know how many fingers. With that.
it does lead me to something that probably there's no actual evidence to what I'm about to say, but an accent goes a hell of a lot farther than anything I can do in all my years of experience.
Well, Jamie, what about your own accent? You have a Brenda Vaccaro kind of thing going. You've always had that gravelly thing. Didn't you have a nose?
Yeah. I had some issues. I got my tonsils out when I was 22, and it ruined my vocal cords.
Oh my god!
Oh, no.
I know you said. Didn't you say though? What job was it? Was it Driftless Glen that you had the phone interview? And Brian said, "I like the sound of that voice. That voice.
Yep.
You're hired." Well,
or I get Miley Cyrus
signature
voice a lot, which is terrifying because I don't have a twang.
Twang.
You can always put it in there. Little twang. Let's see. What are you guys doing now with the whole COVID thing for your brands? How is it? And especially because you have a portfolio, you have all these to work on.
Yeah. So it's something we never imagined. We're trying to navigate ourselves, but certain things, I mean, just making sure that you're staying present in the market right now in any way that you can. So I've made goodie bags. I guess I'm giving away my secrets right now. No one else do that.
That's what the show's all about.
TM.
So I'll do like little 100 mLs of glass bottles I buy on Amazon, and then I'll label them for sample use only, but maybe I'll do like my 4 SKUs that I'm really interested in Benny's tasting right now, and I'll drop that off along with the sales sheet behind it and say, okay, here's your COVID friendly staff training, and they're able to do that. But little stuff like that is making a difference for sure.
You should put little face masks in your kit.
Face mask, I've been waiting for like some brand to come out with a face mask POS.
How about handing out copies of whiskey?
I could do you a deal on those, I'm telling you.
Inside, there'll be a picture of Lou drinking whatever brand you're pushing at the time.
It's a good one.
God help me.
Can I get a quantity discount, Lou?
Absolutely. No, seriously, one of the best things that happened with the previous book with tasting whiskey was the number of people in the industry who picked it up and were using it as a training tool. It got that book out there. It was great.
Also makes a good doorstep. So
I will admit that.
Yeah. Lou is actually sitting on a whole stack of his books, Jamie. So if you want to buy any, that's
I can probably let him go.
You kind of overplanned right before this whole thing, and so whatever you
and I think the other thing is taking time to reassess things within your business that maybe you don't have time to during the grind of a normal sales year. So things I've been doing is starting conversations with other distributors in all the states that I manage, making sure they know who the collective is and what brands they feel interested in, talking about sales goals, reassessing your pricing. Are there nickels and dimes that you could be saving? And then honestly, this you have to okay with your distributor, but I did get one of them to okay. I put in some like really aggressive on-premise sales because everyone's going to be brands like DIAGEO or Pernod Ricard. They're going to be throwing money for the on-prem to try and get that placement back that we just don't have. So doing aggressive deals for one-time placements and maybe printing that out on a sheet and just leaving it behind to your accounts that were previously using your product, right? So maybe you have 10 accounts that are crushing cocktails for you pre-COVID. Now they're not. Making sure you're just dropping off that sales sheet. But the thing I've been trying to do the most is just really respect people's space. So I'm not trying to meet with people. I'm trying to do things where they feel safe. So whether that's leaving things for them to taste on their own or leaving sales sheets or letting them know I'm available when they're ready. But I think we will find some people who are over aggressive and are too worried about sales goals in the moment that they may kind of burn some bridges in that way.
So we've got one last question, and I think that's about all we have time for. So really quick, your short and sweet answer. Do y'all think that the alcohol sales ambassador travel for many of us to different states will ever go back to pre-pandemic scenarios? So this is from Fred.
What do you think, Liz? It says y'all.
Let's start with Jamie.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it will. I think we have to get to a point where people are comfortable with travel. There's certain areas. I was in a very rural area about 2 weeks ago and did a blitz in an area where we never normally would have done sales. So kind of finding those pockets. I know things like, I personally, distributors have shut down all work with for the foreseeable future. So I think until you have work withs again, it's probably not going to be the best use of your money unless you're with a team doing a blitz in a place where people are comfortable. But the most larger cities right now is not the right time for it. But I'm hopeful that we will get to a place again where we can travel.
What do you think, Lewis?
I definitely think so. I mean, the thing is, it's a pretty safe bet. If we don't get to that, things are going to be so different that nobody will remember what we said.
Yeah. I think it has to go back to that, because the big thing in the liquor industry always has been, and every time I've seen some of these brands try to get away from it, it never works. There's personal relationships. And brand ambassadors do a good sales rep. I mean, you go back, Paddy's Irish Whiskey was named after a sales rep in Ireland. He made such an impact on the brand or for that company that they named a whiskey after. I mean, that's
Van Winkle, same thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Pappy Van Winkle never made whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
and I think even this might kind of piggyback on that question of, I keep hearing rumors of distributor reps getting nervous saying that they're going to get rid of reps as a whole, and just move to like an online ordering system. Like that's the future of distributors. So a lot of reps are nervous, like either have to get a manager job or a supplier job. But I do believe that personal interaction, that's what this industry is built on, hospitality, right? Like we all know that one bar that sucks that we go to just because the bartender is awesome to talk to, like we all know that, like that's such a big part of what we do and why we're in this industry, that I think if that goes away and becomes an ordering system, then
and they already have that. For some, they have a tier for smaller brands or for smaller accounts where it is already, you just call in your order, and those accounts always want reps. They want a person
because they miss tasting and learning, and
they don't like the whole, I never get to see the product before I buy it kind of stuff.
Guys, I hate to, but I got to run. I got a dentist appointment I got into.
That's what Lou calls it. He's dealing with his
all right, massage.
Druggy,
Jamie, thank you. Thank
you.
Thank
you, Lou. I know. One day in person, hopefully.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And we never got to talk about the book you have coming out, My Hero, My Uncle. That will be coming out this fall. So I'm looking forward to that myself. Preface.
A mention on page 251, or.
So the one thing I did want to mention before it's sorry, I know, is I definitely got in the industry because I saw like the success that Marty had, and I find a lot of people get into the industry because they know someone. So I think it's a lot of our responsibilities, like everyone on this podcast, to try and find someone that you can mentor or help or introduce them to the industry.
But keep in mind, I never helped Jamie. I mean, I really.
It only hurt,
Introduction. That's all it takes.
No, she actually did a lot of. She got where she got because of her. She asked me for advice every once in a while, but I was always amazed. I go, "Oh my God, that's so smart!" And you just did that on your own. And I was surprised mainly because you got into it younger, and I was surprised that you were as smart as you were for as young as you were. that I thought, that's wow, where'd that savvy come from? But it's obviously from my side of the family. So
I
anyway,
gotta run.
yeah,
Okay,
Thanks,
see ya.
Lou.
take care of the tooth. Jamie, thank you very much. The link
Thank
below for the collective is down below, folks, so check it out. And next week we have Fionn O'Connor, all the way from Ireland. He'll be talking about the state of Irish whiskey. Fionnan's a wonderful young man who wrote a book called The Parting Glass. I highly recommend that you check this out. It's basically the history of single pot still whiskey and Irish whiskey. But he's going to be great. He's a great guy, really knowledgeable. So we'll see you all next week with them. Until then, Jamie, Liz Sturd.
Jamie, thank you so much. It was
Thank
good
you
to chat
guys.
with you.
You two, you're like sisters. Look, you're the same height.
Just on this. I think I'm like
Female
a foot
power.
tall, right?
Yeah, that's right. Jamie's former basketball player. I was
I'm
going to
almost 6 foot. Yeah.
star basketball player at Roosevelt University.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. Bye, kids.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Thank you.